All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Bearded Gear podcast. This is episode number 26, and I'm joined tonight by Michael Miller, as you can see from his little badge down there. And Michael is from the Tactile Knife Company, affiliated with Tactile Turn Pens, which I own a couple of those as well. I'm sure we're going to talk about that avenue through the course of tonight, but I was really excited to do this. I'm actually just now in the process of finishing up my review on the Tactile Knife Co. Rockwall, which is the first and current only at the moment knife offering from Tactile Knife Company. Brand new, all US made. There's a lot of fun, interesting stuff we've got to talk about for this knife. And I've been saying through my review process of this knife how excited I am that there's a new US maker on the scene who's doing stuff in-house. And Michael is part of why that's a reality. So we're going to chat tonight and get down into the weeds about Tactile Knife Company and hopefully have some fun and just talk in general as well. We don't have to be hyper specific. I rarely am. I'm sure we'll go down into the weeds on a lot of things. But Michael, how are you tonight, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure
really appreciate
is all mine. Yeah. So there are a couple of people from what I've seen at Tactile Knife Company. I understand you're still relatively small. I would imagine you guys have just started out, but can you explain to the listeners how you fit into the scene at Tactile Knife Company and kind of how we got to you and I sitting down today?
So Tactile Knife Company was started as a concept years ago. It started actually as a brand last year. In August, there were the first people hired on for Tactile Knife Company. I was in that first round of people that were hired on to help grow this brand from the bottom up. I was hired for community management, marketing, helping with those areas, of which I've got quite a bit of experience in the EDC community with. I've been around in this world since 2014, as far as the online EDC community, Instagram, Facebook, social media, stuff like that. I've been a lifelong knife lover. Being born in Texas, you've basically born with a knife in your hand. That was definitely my childhood, and I'm so excited to work for a company that's bringing American-made knives to Texas and doing it in what I think is a great way.
I love it. Yeah. So you oversee, like you said, a lot of marketing. It's that kind of that realm of the company. When you say you've been in the scene since like 2014, has a lot of that stint been professionally, like working in the industry, or has some of it just been consuming knives, or how's that relationship been?
So as a collector, I've been in knives for my whole life. I seriously remember being a kid having a knife in my pocket. I remember being 12 years old and carrying an Emerson Commander and loving the wave.
12-year-old.
Yeah, I was going through Emerson's and Benchmade's as a kid. And so I definitely came into this community as a collector and as an enthusiast. I remember buying my first mid-tech. I remember buying my first custom back in 2014. I started working in this industry on the business side of things back in 2015. I started a brand with a friend of mine in Hawaii, and then later started a brand with my wife, Fox Hanks, a handkerchief company, back in 2016 with my wife. And that we've had to close that brand just because I'm so busy doing what I'm doing now, and we're really happy because of it. And so I've been in the knife community, worked with a lot of custom knife makers, worked with a lot of production knife brands as well for the last 4 years.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me, the idea of working in the industry, because I'm just kind of at a point right now personally where that's like starting to become a reality. There's a knife project that a buddy and I have started, and he literally got his prototype today. We're partnering with Riat as an OEM, and mine are still in the mail, so they're not quite here yet, which is eating my soul alive. But I always love hearing from people who've been in the industry, especially when it's been like for years in a professional capacity where it's what they do. Because I think, like, from the perspective that I've always had of just kind of being into knives, it seemed like borderline impossible. Like it's such a small niche industry seemingly on its own. The idea that there are people in it who are able to create a job and an income and a career within it is always so fascinating to me, because it's like, it's been my hobby for a long time. And so I've dreamt of it being a reality, but it's cool to hear that for you, it's been a number of different things all within the industry. And now it's gotten you to this next chapter being with a legitimate US knife company that's brand new. You got in as they were beginning. That's got to be just like, to so many people, that's kind of a dream situation where it's like a cool new company that's already in the EDC realm is now making knives, and you get to kind of be there and be a part of it. It's such an exciting idea.
For sure. Coming in at the ground floor was definitely a blessing. Being able to see it from design, from where we were thinking about moving the brand at the beginning to being like, well, phooey on it. Why make somebody else's knife better? Let's make our own knife great. So we decided to come out with a Rockwall, which was an idea at the time. And then it took us from September all the way to March before we finally had any product ready to sell. So that whole time of research and development, figuring out the process of making a knife from the ground up, because if you look at the team of people that we have Matt, who is an amazing, wonderful designer, but has designed knives in the past, but has never made knives himself personally. And between him, me, who's worked inside the industry for a long time, and Will, who's been a collector of knives and worked again inside this industry for the last over 10 years, I believe. Between the three of us, we're all the knife experience that this company had. So it was really, really amazing being able to be like, okay, well, we have this problem. How are we going to solve it? We put our heads together. We have a lot of problems, and then we get past it and we move forward to the next step.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. So I guess from when you first started, what kind of part of the process were you guys at? Was it a design concept? Were there working prototypes? Like when on your day one, what did Tactile Knife Company look like?
So we talked a little bit in late August, and at that time, like I said, there was only one employee that was full-time knives. You had Will, who was helping build this knife brand, and then you also had Kevin, who does all of our turn parts and helps as well. But at that time, the Rockwall was a design that was CAD'd out. It was in AutoCAD. It had a bent wire clip instead of the folded clip that we have here. And it was really, in all honesty, it was a 3D printed version that had a sheetrock screw or something like that holding it together, just to see the form factor kind of size comparison. And our goal as a brand was to make scales for Benchmade bug outs. And we were going to maybe try and go a little bit that direction, try and get the machines running, try and start making some money. And then we were like, again, like I said, why make somebody else's knife good whenever we can make a knife that we think is great? So we definitely went a different path with that, and went with the Rockwall and releasing this as soon as we could to market. With all the difficulties of figuring out how to get everything dialed in, it was definitely a challenge, but it was a blessing. This right here is actually the first prototype. So the first prototype was made the day before the California Custom Knife Show in California, in Anaheim. And it was in October 13th or something like that.
I was at that show.
Yeah. So I seriously had to drive to Fort Worth to pick up this knife because it was finished at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's how bad the action is. It's definitely been, it was a learning curve trying to get everything dialed in. As you know, you've had one of our earlier knives. It's been a blessing to be able to figure out some of these problems, but it's also been a challenge at the same time.
Yeah. So I've actually talked about that on the podcast before. There was a post you guys made. It was a while ago now. I'm so far behind with all the traveling I've been doing, and YouTube isn't the only thing that I do, although I treat it like a full-time job a lot of the time. Anyway, I'm behind on videos. So it's now been I think like 2 months since I first unboxed a rock wall. And then I sent that in to you guys to get an updated one, and all that has kind of transpired since. But you guys made a post on Instagram that caused me to ramble about it quite a bit on the podcast, because you talked about how the original ones that you sent out already, like, there were advancements made, and you guys are only a couple hundred knives in. And I loved that you could be open about that and kind of fearless to say, like, look, knife number 400 is going to be better than knife number 20 something, because we've learned and we've developed and we've worked in new processes. And I think everybody, if they're being honest, if they're setting out to make something new, that should be what happens. But so many companies try so desperately to cover everything and put sparkly paint on anything that they possibly can, so that people have no idea that there's a difference between knife number 22 and knife number 400. I just loved that you guys were able to go out and say, like, we have been learning and developing, and we're excited about it, because you're brand new. People should be along for the ride. So has that just kind of been your thought process as you guys have been setting out to get these to market, is like, let people see that we're brand new? And the first one that I had was fantastic, but this one is snappier, and like, I like the improvements that you guys have made. But have you just kind of had that mentality in mind throughout, like, we're just going to let people see what we're up to, or how has that worked internally?
So as a collector and as a person who's been a part of this industry, I've got great friends that I know their first names. I know the names of their spouses, the names of their kids. These are my customers. So it has a heavy weight whenever I put my name behind something and I ship it out the door, because I know that one of my friends is going to buy it. And do I want to sell my friend something that I don't think is worth what I'm asking for? No. So I'm always going to try and put my best foot forward. We've had some things that we've tweaked, some things that we've tuned. The way that we do the detent changed at like the 160 mark or something like that. A lot of the previous ones before that were good, but it was just more of a struggle for us to make something that was good. Versus now we're able to do it with more consistency, more speed, trying to fine tune ourselves as a brand. One thing that we have done recently, I don't know if yours has it, but we've added a detent ramp. Mine doesn't have one. So the one that I carry every day has the same old. Now, is a detent ramp an end all be all? I don't think so. I've had knives that are custom knives that don't have it, and I've never lost a blink of sleep over it. But overall, it is something that we can do that improves it to some people. I don't think it hurts it to anybody that doesn't. I don't think anybody's not gonna care about it. But do I think it's a like game changing improvement? No. And a lot of we've been at a kind of fork in the road, and we've decided that instead of being like, all right, let's save all of our ideas and do like what Apple does and be like, well, we're going to do the iPhone 7, now the iPhone 7C. We're going to keep running this product line. If there is something that we can change that improves it, that is something that is not drastically major in changing the fixtures, changing every single process of the creation that we go about, we're going to try and just put it in there, put it in the box, send it on its way, so that it goes so that our customers, so that my friends, so that the people in this community get our best offering every single day. We've learned a lot of things. We've tweaked a few things. But again, it's very, very minor things overall. Mostly the only two things really are finishing that we've done, and then like how our grind process is done. Because again, we got a new machine, and then the detent ball, how it's placed, and then the detent ramp. Those are only a few adjustments, but again, we're gonna try and be open about it. I love showing the behind the scenes. I love showing that we're an American-made company. Again, because so many people can't. I love showing the people behind it. the individuals that are being supported by this brand, their families that are being supported by this brand, because we care about all of our employees. We care about every single team member that is trying to make this knife a part of this community.
Yeah, no, I dig it. So a bunch of things come to mind when you talk about that. First, I think if you guys can keep that mentality of constantly adjusting and tweaking and kind of being the mad scientists in the garage who are looking at your own process and you're refining it as you go, like that's really, really exciting for where the company can be headed, because it's so much easier to just lazily be like, on from the get-go, we made a knife, we like it, we're going to put it out there, don't touch it, just let it do what it's going to do, just push it out to market. Feedback is good anyways, why change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it type of mentality, right? But instead, the fact that you guys care enough to be in there looking at it, constantly thinking, how can we make it 3% better? Like, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we are trying to make it a little bit faster, a little bit better. I think that's really, really good. And I've had this similar conversation centering around, like, I think Spyderco is the prime example, because they do CQI, constant quality improvement is part of their process. And I've seen some people complain about it, but I look at it as a really, really positive thing. The complaints are usually like, oh, well, if I got one of the early ones, then it's antiquated really quick because like 2 months later, they've done CQI and it's a little bit better. But the way I come down on it is like Spyderco doesn't release a knife that has flaws necessarily. Like if you bought the Capara when it very first came out, still a really, really cool knife. People just wanted it to be a little more drop shutty, and Spyderco heard that. And so on the fly, without making a Capara 2 or a Capara 0.5 or whatever, like without having to release it as a new model, they just made the adjustment and kept making them. And so sometimes on the secondary, people will be picky about looking for like, oh, I have to have a post CQI one as they're in search of or whatever. So it may slightly alter secondary values or whatever it may be. But I think good on Spyderco for being the type of brand that has the mobility, especially since they're huge, to like make those adjustments and make their knives better. And then if you're buying one new, you're getting the one that's a little bit better. And I just think that's the better alternative than waiting when you know it could be better for the right like marketing time to release a whole new model and like make a spiel about it. It's so much cooler of them to just like immediately adapt and put it out. So the fact that you guys are doing that and you're looking at it all the time and you're taking the steps, which I'm sure aren't free, to adjust constantly. That's new setup. You're probably burning through some materials while you're figuring it out. Like all those things cost time and money to do as a company, but you're taking the effort and you're making the effort and you're caring enough to make those switches because the knives will be better for the next person that buys one. That's like, that should be knife making, in my opinion. I love that.
We appreciate it. And I know we are a new company, and our goal is obviously to come out with a product that doesn't need any changes. But again, we're not even a year old as far as a brand concept wise. And like, for example, since we have the Rockwall, since we have a product, since we are making a knife, we've decided that we want to make more knives since we're going to be a knife company.
Right.
So we have our slip joint, the Bayer. I don't know if you've seen it.
Seen on Instagram, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been in the process of still fine tuning the process of this. We had a really great action, but we had a problem with it. We took one to Blade Show and a bunch of people opened and closed it. A bunch of people loved how it felt. And then as soon as we got it home, like a week after that, the action felt like awful. And it was because there was a problem with the mainspring, and the mainspring in a slip joint is really, that's your boom or bust. So we had a great action, but it only lasts a certain amount of times. Okay, so we went into the R&D side of things. Again, because we have a model that we're able to produce and able to get out there, we're spending a little bit more time trying to make sure that this is ready 100% to go. And we've repurposed a robot that's just been sitting in the corner since whenever I was hired. And all it does all day is take a prototype like this that is geared to be able to be grabbed by the robot, and it opens it and closes it. And that's all it does all day long.
That's epic.
And we've gotten it to the point where we've gotten over 10,000 cycles out of off of the robot. So how many years is that going to equate to as far as somebody opening and closing their knife on a daily basis?
On a slip joint, that's a lot of years.
Yeah. So
on a clipper, people might do it 100 times in an hour, but a slip joint, it's less constant.
And we do want to have a great action that has a great positive mid-stop, a great positive close, and a great positive opening. So we do want them to have some sort of a fidget factor in that sense. But it doesn't have to, it needs to last as long as it can. So again, we're still trying to push it. We're still trying to fine tune it. We're seeing where that limit is before we come to market with this, because we're really close. We actually have a waitlist system up for this. And I know you have experience with our waitlist system, but we've definitely been fine tuning and refining this process maybe a little bit more than whenever we did with the Rockwall, because we've learned from this so much. I think the Rockwall is again, I'm not going to put my name behind something that isn't, I think, top shelf. I think this is a amazing knife, amazing offering with great components, great everything. And if we'd have come out from day one with some of the knowledge that we have, with fine tuning actions, with getting everything dialed in, I would have been happy. But the process that we went through, and again, this experience of growing a brand from the ground up is something that I wouldn't trade for anything.
Yeah, no, I dig that. I think I've tried to give advice in some ways for people who are thinking about like starting a YouTube channel, and I think this is kind of parallel, where a lot of times people are really worried about getting started because they're like, I need to get a really good 4K camera, and I need amazing audio equipment, and I need to have an awesome collection already so that I have stuff to make content about. And I want to make sure that, and they just have this list of things that are stopping them from starting. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a conversation with my wife when I was starting my YouTube channel, and I'd already been meaning to for a long time and had this whole list of things that were stopping me, the biggest one being time. But when COVID hit, it was like, time's not an excuse anymore. And then I was like starting to go through this list of things that I was psyching myself out with. And my wife basically said, like, if you don't look back on your first video in a year and cringe, then you waited too long. Like, it's much better to start and take it seriously. That doesn't mean like be an idiot about it, but start and do the best you can, but you should learn a ton by doing. And that's kind of been my whole life. The best way that I've ever learned anything is getting into the trenches and doing it. And it's true. Like when I look back on my earliest videos now, I'm not impressed with myself from the time, but I'm really glad that I started and I didn't wait, because the most advancement you can do is, or you can make, is when you're doing. And so I think especially with the Rockwall being your first offering, like, I'm glad you guys didn't just wait years and years to get it out and think that it's perfect. Like, the knife was really good when it came out. I had one of the early ones and it was fantastic. It was a really, really good knife. And so you guys weren't coming to market with something that shouldn't have been brought to market. It's just that you guys you're continuing to learn. And that's like, it's just great to me that you guys can say that, because again, so many people seem just afraid to admit that their work yesterday wasn't perfect. And it's like, what is perfect? Like, nothing's perfect anyways. Like, every custom maker or production maker should be getting better as time goes on. And I think it's just nice to be like intellectually honest about that. And it's refreshing from the consumer side to see a company who's taking that approach. So again, I applaud you guys for it. I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. It's been a fun experience for sure.
Killer, man. So I'm interested. You work specifically for Tactile Knife Company, am I correct? Or do you wear any hats for Tactile Turn?
I don't. I see it all happening, and I know some stuff about it. I can't answer every question, but I
Sure.
can answer what I know.
So the only reason why I bring it up is because I actually have a couple of tactile turn pens, and
Hmm.
obviously you guys are related. You share a roof. Are you in the same building?
We're in the same building, so we
Perfect.
share currently 9,000 square feet of warehouse space
Gotcha.
that we're machining our parts out of.
Okay. So I am not super into pens. I've gotten deeper into the hole in recent months for sure. But um, the first nice pen that I got was a Urban Survival Gear Tie Scribe,
Hmm.
I think it's called, and love that pen. It's great. I still own it. But I just at that point, this was years ago now. I was like, I want to get a nice pen and then be done with it. I don't want to do with pens what I've done with knives. I just want to get a nice one, and that obviously didn't last because now I'm holding up two of these, and I've got some refined pens, and I have a number of nice pens. I've got a Microtech Siphon, which is a
Yeah.
crazy pen, but like, um, I've kind of gotten into them a little bit, not like knives, but anyway, I got this. This one is the I
Slim
forget
bolt.
this. I don't think it's
No,
slim.
that's
This
not a
one,
slim bolt. That's a regular size bolt. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
bolt. I'm terrible with the names, but I got this on a whim because River's Edge Cutlery carries them, and I adore River's Edge Cutlery, and I order from them way, way, way too often. So I just saw them in stock, and I was like, I've been meaning to try one of those. I'll just get it, and I was blown away by how nice this pen is. And I have this one as well. This is the Overlander,
Overlander
which
version.
is
Yeah.
really, really cool. But this pen in particular, I keep geeking out about. I love carrying it together with the
Hmm.
Rockwall because they just seem so abundantly related down to the way that like the scales are machined on here and the way that you guys leave the texture, like this machined, I don't know, the ridges all over the pen. It, they go hand in hand so well. Um, and I think the most excitement I had about the Rockwall when I first unboxed it was it made me feel like when I unboxed this, and I was like pleasantly surprised by the sensation of how it feels in hand. And I'm imagining that's where tactile, the name, kind of
Yes.
comes from. Am I wrong there?
Yeah,
But
for sure.
how does that like factor into your guys' design process? This was a long way to get here. I'm sorry,
No
but
problem.
for you guys, like picking finishing and materials and stuff, like is that something that just has to shine through your whole line because that's your name is tactile, or how did you get to this sensation?
So Will, being the owner of Tactile Turn, and he's made pins for the past 10 plus years. He's had this signature staple finish, that tactile feel, that pure machine finish that gives a super clean line, and it's really been a staple for everything that he's shipped out the door. So when coming into the knife world, he was like, "Well, I have to stay true to who I am."
Mm,
With for what I make. So again, the design concept of the Rockwall was so that it fit with the tactile turn MO, a very clean minimalist aesthetic that doesn't take up too much space, isn't more fluff than action. It does what it needs to do in a platform that looks good and functions flawlessly. So that those were our design parameters to our goal, just to create this in the way that in the way that we did. So whenever Matt was tasked with programming the handles, it was clear we had to go with that signature tactile texturing feel. So that's what you're talking about whenever you're talking about the pins. It is a little bit more aggressive and maybe sharp on the pins because of
mhm.
how small the form factor is.
Right.
We can tone it down a little bit and still get a really great feel out of it with the knife, and that's what we've done. And that again crosses over with our next model as well. So it's going to have that exact same finishing texture.
I love that. Yeah, I've always had this strange like affinity for metal scale materials,
Mm-hmm.
titanium probably being my favorite because I don't like heavy knives. But when they have machined in texture that isn't like abrasive or rough, but is texture nonetheless. And I don't know, it's easily one of my favorite ways I've ever seen titanium finished for a knife handle is the way that you guys do it. And there's a few players who do it pretty well. Like I've got the Oz Machine Company Roosevelt, and he does his golf putter milling.
Okay, yeah.
And it's pretty subtle. It's not super deep, so it doesn't feel rough or jagged or anything, but it provides just enough more texture than the material would if it was left smooth to like feel like you're getting a little more grip on it and feel like something interesting is happening in your hand. And the fact that you guys can do that, but you're right, it is also like this is a much finer the I don't know, the gaps
spacing,
between the spacing is much finer here, but it fits the knife the way that you guys have done that. It just feels really cool to me that shines through. And even on the Overlander, which is coated, I can still feel that. It's like kind of unreal. When I unboxed the pen, I think in my unboxing, I was like, I don't think this is two pieces because you can't see where it matches up here for the tip to come off. And then I just kind of twisted and it started to come undone. And it was like, oh, that's unreal that they've got that level of fit that I couldn't see the gap. And it's, so are you using kind of the same machinists even and the same machines themselves for the knives as they are on the pen side? Or have you had to train new machinists to do that same kind of thing, but on the knives? How does that relationship work?
I can break that down fairly easy. So we currently run 4 Swiss lathes. Swiss lathes are like the cream of the crop as far as turning capability. So all of our screws are machined in-house. All of our pins are machined in-house. So whenever it comes to turned from bar stock, a Swiss lathe is going to be a Cadillac. So all of our hardwares are run on the same machines that are running pins. All of our our screws and our pivots, our pivot barrel are all going to be run on those Swiss lathes. So whenever there is machine time available, or we make sure that we just fit it in the schedule, we run the parts that we need. Because we are a knife company, the amount of turn parts that are needed to make this versus a tactile turn pin are substantially less. So we don't take up much time on the Swiss lathes. What we're taking up time on are the mills. Whenever I was hired there, we had a CMX mill and a Doosan that had just gotten there. The Doosan is primarily knife based. The CMX is primarily pin based currently. So all of the 3D machines, pin clips are done on the CMX that we run. So we had a machine shop. We're not a machine shop. We had people who knew how to mill. We had Matt who programmed and designed for those mills. So whenever he had the Doosan, he started prototyping the Rockwall. He started making all of the hardware for all of the handle materials for it, all of the backspacer, the blade, everything was all done on that. So we did have to add a person to be able to run those 2 machines. We're currently adding another one so that we could run 2 shifts to be able to run more efficiently. And we also had to add 2 people to run the wire EDMs that we have and the surface grinder that we have to make sure that all of our materials are flat and that all of our materials are cut out in-house. So we had to add, there's currently a total of 12 people working for the knife side of things. And so we had to have 12 employees. Whenever I was hired, like I said, it was just me and Matt who were the full-time knife people. And then we hired his brother to help with assembly. We had Tim as well. So whenever I was hired, we had Tim who ran the wire EDMs and helped with knife making experience. I, again, just totally blanked. He is a custom knife maker for, I believe, the last, again, around 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Mostly fixed blades. Ardent Knives is what he is the brand that he's been a part of. Yeah. He's gone to California shows. You might have met him in person sometime. But yeah, he's our EDM specialist, and he also runs our surface grinders. And he has a guy that works with him, Daryl, that helps him out as well.
I love that. So you guys are doing literally every component of the knife in-house as well. The hardware.
So
But
there are two things that we don't make of the Rockwall in house, and it is the stop pin, which is a tiny little piece that efficient base is able to be bought more efficiently,
sure.
and is completely precision to our specs that we need, and then also the ceramic bearings. But I don't know a knife brand that makes their own ceramic bearings, so I'm going to give us a pass on that.
Yeah, I think the only one literally is Skiff, and I think they
Oh
make
yeah,
more bearings than they do knives. They
yeah,
sell a
yeah.
lot of bearings, but their knives are incredible. So, yeah, that's impressive. And you guys, you run IKBS inside, right?
Yes, yeah, we do. We do uncaged bearings to keep a closed pivot, close stop pin track,
Mm,
and to keep the form factor size that we need. If we did cage bearings, we wouldn't be able to keep this size. You'd be looking at a larger footprint inside your pocket,
mm.
and that's that again to stick with the concept of the tactile turn minimalist look. We couldn't make something that was big and beefy.
Right.
If it's unnecessary.
I dig it. Yeah, I carried the Rockwall today. I've been carrying it a
Mhm.
lot the past couple of days. I'm about to shoot my full review on it. It keeps getting pushed back, but the next day or two, I'll be filming my full review. So I've been trying to put it through more and more paces as I'm getting ready for that kind of final push. And I carry this as a secondary. I'm a two knife kind of guy. I carry a larger folder front right pocket. That's where I reach if it's like a crazy situation that I need a knife, if I ever need to use one defensively or something. I want the bigger one there. But I carry a secondary back left pocket every day, unless I'm like literally in the house in basketball shorts. If I'm wearing something that has a back pocket, I have a secondary knife on me. And this is phenomenal in that role. It carries like a pack of gum. Not that anyone buys packs of gum like I'm referring to anymore. Now they're all like rectangle weird things, but it's genuinely just such a nice footprint. You got the deep carry clip, everything stays slim. Even with the flipper tab, it's a nice minimalist little flipper tab that's not sticking out and poking anything. It's just very pleasant to carry. So I get that. I don't know that I own any other knives that have uncaged bearings, but I feel like sometimes people make a big deal of that, and it honestly doesn't it doesn't bother me one bit. I
Yeah. There's a lot of industry staples that are uncaged bearings. And if you spend a little bit of time taking your knife apart and aren't just in a frantic, crazy rage trying to make that happen, then you shouldn't have a problem. We
right.
do recommend that you have a clean, flat space and that you're taking it apart on like a towel or something like that, so that everything can stay in that area and not just roll out and get away from you. So as long as you take your time and you go about it thinking about that process, you shouldn't have a problem. Speaking of how you carry your knife, so I'm right-handed, but I've got a lot of nerve damage, so I'm left-handed, but not by choice. But I carry this knife in my back left pocket,
Mm.
and I've done it since I had the prototype and I was carrying it, and it carries extremely well. So as a left-handed person, it makes it where I have a left-handed knife, even though we only do have a right hand primary carry your main pocket clip. That's the style of clip that we have.
That's back left pocket is perfect for a right-handed clip, because if you
Mhm.
move it all the way to the side of that pocket, I keep it the closest toward kind of my hip, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
Same.
still nestled in just like it would be in your front right pocket, where
Exactly.
the blade side is up against the edge. And it's like, I love knives that carry well there, because I always carry a knife there. And secondary knives too, like for me, this is a knife that honestly is just big enough that if it was the only knife that I carried on me, and I have a few times, I wouldn't be worried that this is too small. But the fact that it is small enough to go there is big for me, because I found, especially as I've reviewed a lot of knives over the past year plus, like it's harder for me to find knives that are great secondaries that click for me,
Hmm.
because once you get into a package that's small enough and comfortable enough and light enough to fit there really comfortably and do well, like it starts to be you're dancing with a line of not having enough handle, or like it just being funky ergonomically because things are kind of smushed into a small package, or, small knives, I think, are harder to get right than larger knives, or even just like typical like 3.5 inch folders. That's a much easier design space, I think, to dwell in, because ergos are so much easier to nail, and like proportions are easier to play with. Internal components, like
The
you
internals, yeah,
said,
that's major.
yeah, if you had if this was a 3.5 inch folder and you guys went a little bigger, then you could use whatever bearings you want, because the whole thing just blew up, right? Like the
Exactly.
dimensions grew in every direction, so there's more room to fit stuff. And it's just rare for me to find a knife that's small enough to really shine as a secondary and not kind of be forced there, um, and and just be really, really good. So
Yeah.
I commend you guys for being able to pack it in so well, especially as I've gotten more into like trying to design and drawing knives and putting them into 2D. I can't do 3D, but there are inherent challenges that I think a lot of people don't understand unless they've tried to take a design to the point where it has to function and work, and moving parts have to be able to interface with each other. The smaller you go, the harder that is, for sure.
The internal ergonomics are just our internal chemistry, like how this all functions together, is
Mhm.
really quite astounding. How much tolerances you have to keep and how little room you have to wiggle with. So speaking on size, though, so I wear AXL standard glove, and it is always hard to put on my hand. A thick, big, beefy, meaty hands, and I still get a full four finger grip with a Rockwall. And one thing that I do get with this knife that isn't as common is just how thin and slicey this knife is behind the edge, and just overall thickness. You're talking about a knife that's going to slice and dice for days on end.
Yeah. So when you guys were setting out to, like, with this knife being the first one that came to market,
Mm-hmm.
what was your kind of vision for the model itself? Like, did you see it? I know you've said the word minimalist a lot. You're obviously in kind of an EDC space, but did you see it as like an office companion type of knife? Did you see it as like a hard use, like as someone who wants to EDC and is going through a ton of zip ties and chopping through like more brutal stuff? Or I guess kind of like how heavy duty, and what type of person did you feel like you designed it for?
So I'll be honest, my first custom knife was a Demco 8010. And if you know what a Demco 8010 is, you're talking about the beefiest, the thickest
Yeah, I'd hold up
knife.
my 8020, but actually, I think it is in this other case. Hold on. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's fine. So like I've come from like beast mode knives, and there's nothing wrong with those. Yeah. So
And this
the
is
same
smaller than the
size.
10.
Yeah, the thickness is mostly probably what your difference is.
Right.
So the thickness on the tin is nearly a third, I'd say. So you're talking about you've got a phone book in your
Right.
pocket. Will's design idea for the Rockwall was to have it take up minimal pocket space.
Mm.
If you have keys, if you have change, if you have anything in your pocket, it doesn't need to get in your way. You should be able to put this in your pocket and still reach inside and get anything that you need.
Mhm.
And then also thinness. Again, we're trying to go with similar to a pin profile. And as a knife, I think this is about as close as you're going to get. You mentioned a pack of gum. Honestly, that's become kind of a inside joke for Tactile Knife Co. Is that if you open up the blade of this, you can stick this inside of a pack of gum, and it comes up to about here.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're looking at, again, a pack of gum.
It's like a
If you
Wrigley's knife.
Yeah, and the exact same. So like your juicy fruit or whatever, Big Red.
Yeah,
So you're looking at the same profile again with the Bayer, which is our slip joint,
that
and
looks crazy thin.
this is crazy thin. So
That's
you're
like two
looking
pieces of gum thick.
three. So
Okay.
you can still keep two pieces of gum inside of a gum pack and stick this thing inside of there.
That's the
I've
perfect
got
way to like get past security. Not that I should say that, but you have your pack of gum. You still got two pieces there, maybe sandwiched around it, and they're wrapped in silver foil.
It doesn't quite work because you've got your blade's going to be sticking out, and they're gonna clearly know what's up. But yeah, it is. It's definitely, we want to go for thin. We want to go for clean. So as far as like what you're saying, who that's for, I personally think that is very much your office, your cardboard box warrior. This is not a knife design that's meant for stabby trying to self protect. Now, can it do some rolls like that? Yes, but that's not what it's designed for. It's designed to be able to cut the steak at a restaurant whenever you have one of the worst steak knives available. It's meant to be able to open up the box at your office. It's meant to be able to cut any task that you need in between.
I dig that. Yeah, I always love it when the answer to that question is not too broad, because one of my pet peeves is in the industry when people are like, this knife is a tactical knife that's at home in the office and at home on a sailboat. It's like, stop trying to do so many things. Like,
yeah.
And there's inherently going to be some overlap, right? Like you said, if in a pinch, if this is the knife that's on you and you have to defend yourself from a coyote slice or whatever it is, like this is a sharp implement and it's going to do fairly well at most things that any knife can be expected to do. But the fact that you focused in and you were like, we want it to be this, I think makes it better than trying it to, like, it just, I don't know. It's like designed by committee. If you're trying to check too many boxes and make things fit every role possible, then a jack of all trades is a lot less fun than somebody who's like, or something that's a master in its specific arena. So I like that focus. That sounds cool to me.
Yeah, and it's not that we do plan on making fixed blades that are meant for like bushcraft and for camping. We do.
I like that.
Yeah, we don't want to. We're not just trying to be a brand that this is our box. We want to be able to offer other things. But if you look at, for example, I think size form factor comparison, that's an iconic classic in this industry, is somewhat the Benchmade 940. And the Benchmade 940 is definitely known as a gentleman's carry. It's not designed to be the tactical He-Man knife. And I think that this kind of plays the same role. This is a clean, well-designed, well-executed knife that fits in your pocket, doesn't take up much profile, that is made in America, that is titanium components that are all made in-house, that the blade is, again, ground in-house, heat-treated like 5 miles away from where we are. And we really try and bring as much attention to detail. So we're trying to make an artisan grade, craftsman grade product at a production grade level, and keep a heart and soul and character of our brand, of the people behind it, all in the same package.
I dig it. So yeah, you mentioned the 940, and I think you guys have done a good job. If that's who you're, like, if that's the space you're trying to occupy, and if nothing else, my gripe with the 940 has always been blade stock and grind. You guys are thinner stock, much thinner grind. I love it. So
I remember being about 14 and loving the 15 and loving the 940 design and handling it at knife stores and eventually getting one later in life. But yeah, Benchmade 940 is a great form factor, size, style.
Solid knife for sure. It's funny. I have like a library of content at this point, right? I've reviewed a lot of knives, and there are some videos that I still get comments on regularly that are older. And one of them is my 940 full review. I had a loaner. I've still never owned one somehow, even though I spent, like you, when I was a teenager, that was like the knife I wanted. But by the time I could afford it and was like collecting knives, I'd kind of like missed the boat on it. Anyway, I had a loaner one, and my review was like kind of meh because of where I was at the point where it was like, I think this knife has just been out so long that now so many new things have come out that I like better than it. But it was like, it's fine, but I get so many comments on that video, I think, because my conclusion wasn't like, this is the greatest knife ever. And some people, to them, it's like how the Buck 110 kind of was for a generation. The 940 is iconic to a lot of people. And so people don't take kindly to me saying that it's not my favorite.
I think it was one of the first knives in the industry that was really, like you said, focused.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, well, we want to make a knife and we want to make it for this person, for this sector of the industry. And instead, obviously, there are knives that are tactical and heart, soul, form factor, and everything. But there are not very many knives that are made for a gentleman's carry, for minimalist profile outside of your pocket, for thin to an extent, for light to as extent as possible, for form factor just not being this massively aggressive looking blade in the office. And I think that's what that did. Like you said, it's an iconic knife to a generation. It's a very iconic knife, I think, in this industry.
Yeah. It's interesting too to kind of look back in time and see what knives have kind of stuck,
Mhm.
like what knives have become like now Benchmade has kind of done it again with the bug out, occupying the ultra lightweight space that's thin, lightweight, like the number one knife that is thin and lightweight that is in people's pockets right now is the bug out. And I've loved my bug out. I loaned mine to a buddy almost a year ago now, and I finally told him to just keep it because
Mhm.
he's enjoying it so much. I don't want to pry it back from him. And it's like I've had a couple bug outs. They're phenomenal for what they are. And so I think they kind of deserve that space for a sub 2 ounce knife. They're incredible. And yeah, it's just interesting to see like the PM2 is iconic. The 940 is iconic. The bug out now is iconic. And then there's like the big three of Hinderer, XM18, Sabenza, Strider SNG. They're like I occupy at this point. I think few would argue that they don't occupy some kind of iconic space where they mark a time period of knives. And so it just makes me interested to see like what's going to be iconic from right now that we're not aware yet or is starting to happen, and then what's the future hold for the knife industry, because I think things are kind of shifting a little bit, which I guess is a good as good a segue as any. So there's a conversation that has been circling in the knife community for a couple years now, and I think in 2020 it got more heated to an extent. It got more fervor to say the least, but there's kind of a resistance from a lot of the knife community to buying anything manufactured overseas. And for most of them, it's, I think, specifically knives. These people still have iPhones and stuff, but a
Mhm.
resistance to buying overseas manufactured knives and a push for only buying US. And then there's a faction who are like, I'm kind of in the boat where I would greatly prefer US made, of course, but like my knife design, there's no US OEM that can make it. And that, especially not to compete with what the Chinese OEMs can do for me right now as a knife designer, which I'd love to see change, but like I think it's kind of a necessary thing. And then there's some people who are like, Chinese knives are the best. I want all Chinese made knives. And you see these conversations happening a lot, but it makes me really excited that you guys are in Texas, which is as American of a state as I can think of. I think most people would probably agree with that. And you're doing it all in house, or at least very close to in house, for like your heat treat, like you said, is a few minutes away. Uh, the knife is as US made, essentially, as a US made knife can be in
Yeah.
Texas by Texan laborers. Like it's all happening here. So for you guys, I know that's obviously a thing that you talk about and you want people to know that's where you're from, and you should, but as the company evolves in the future, do you see yourself, this is a very selfish question because of course I'm curious, do you see yourselves becoming an OE for other people's projects as well? Or do you see your guys self staying as like, we're going to make a catalog of products and here they are? Or how does the future look, if that's even been discussed or thought about for Tactile? Is it like, how big does it get and what does it do when it gets big, I guess?
So we've bought a pair of britches, and our goal is to fill them. I guess is the best way to put it. So currently we're in a warehouse that is 9,000 square feet. Will purchased a building that we're going to have access to 19,000 square feet. So we plan on doubling our size
That's huge.
as soon as we can. Another thing is that building has the ability to expand to 40,000 square feet. So as far as we are concerned, our goal is to grow. Our goal is to compete. Our goal is to make. Be that pins, be that knives, be that those are the two brands we have right now, and I don't see anything on the horizon. But we are trying to grow to size, I guess is the best way of putting it. We are probably going to be moving in the next couple months into the new building. In that process, we've bought a Seatman, which is a burger competitor, which is a knife grinding machine. You program it where it grinds your knives for you. It has a very large output. We are currently, as a brand, a fledgling brand and can't keep up with that machine. So right now, honestly, we have the ability to grind other people's knives for them. That's a service we were talking about at Blade Show. That is probably not a service that's going to be on the table for very long, but that is a service that we have available right now.
That's awesome.
But as far as like the question of do we plan on being an OEM shop, the answer is really no. We plan on keeping our machines running, buying more machines, getting those machines running to capacity, and growing to the size that we have available to us. So we don't plan on staying a small knife company, not that we are a small knife company, very long. And we plan on trying to go toe-to-toe with anybody in the industry.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense to me. I as much as I wish that the answer was, yes, we're going to become an OEM who takes projects from designers and can do runs for people, because I would love to have an option for me in the US to use. Of course, what makes most sense is going to be if you guys can fill all of your time making your own products, then of course you're going to like that. And I think that's kind of been like, if I went to ProTech right now, I love ProTech's knives. They don't have time to make knives for me. You know, they can't do that. Hinderer's not going to do it. Koenig definitely not going to do it. Like all these companies typically lately can't make enough knives for their own demand. Mm-hmm. And so why would they use production time and resources, setting up machines and all that to make somebody else's parts? It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm still hopeful that as time progresses, somebody will step up to the plate who has the knowledge and the know-how, like to be that in the US. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see that happen, but I also love to see new knife brands like you guys popping up and kind of living the knife making dream of, like, you guys right now still have some wait lists, right? Like you're trying to make as many knives as people want, and you haven't even gotten through them yet. And that's not even just having knives on the shelf to sell. Like you're still back ordered. That's an exciting predicament to be in, where there's more demand for your product than you can fill at the moment.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about the wait list and kind of explain that a little bit. So for the Rockwall, we're running a wait list system, and for the Bayer, and both of those are currently live. You can find that on our website. The way we run our waitlist system is whenever you sign up, you're saving your spot in line. You don't have to be out money. You're not paying $100. You're not even paying a dollar bill. You're just inputting your email address saying, hey, I'd like to buy one of these whenever I can. As soon as we make X amount of knives, we open up X amount of spots, and we let those spots get filled. We let those get processed, and then we try and make more. So we're just trying to plug through this waiting list as fast as we can. Currently on the Rockwall, we've got a little over 1,000 people on the wait list. Whenever you sign up, you get an email saying this is your spot in line, and we try and get to that number as fast as possible. So like right now, we're at 6 to 8 weeks. As far as our production levels currently to getting to your number. That's not meaning we're making 1,100 knives, because obviously there's going to be people that don't purchase after inputting their email address. Again, there's no money down, so we're going to have a percentage of sales that are just, this is how many people are going to be buying. So that's kind of how we're running our system. As far as production levels, we're looking at like 300. We're looking at 70 knives a week is kind of the numbers we're hitting the last few weeks. We've been in like a 50 to 70 swing for quite a while.
That's a pretty decent amount of knives for
12
every
people.
Component being built there
It keeps
in-house.
the lights on, but it's not helping us with getting out of the black. We're, as a brand, we are, again, still an early brand with a lot of startup costs, and our goal is to grow. So we're going to be doing that. Also, just while we're talking about the wait list and that kind of system, we do have a chef knife. This is a prototype and is not the final production run or what we're going to be offering. The handles are actually going to be no hardware, so it's going to have a really clean aesthetic look.
Very cool.
That's going to be,
that blade
I believe,
really thin. Am I crazy?
It's not. It's a chef knife, so a chef knife is always going to be thin. I don't know
the way you're holding it. It looks like a laser beam. The way that it is
extremely
flat grind.
It is extremely sharp. So we are in the process of getting this dialed in. For this specifically, we're planning on doing a Kickstarter campaign. We don't know when that's going live. So if you're interested in a killer chef knife, again, American made, we're trying to look at price point. We should be hitting 150 or less price point on that. And then also for those, we haven't talked about it here on the podcast, the Rockwall is a $300 knife with XHP or 20 CV. We are in the process of moving towards 20 CV. We probably will switch to and at least give a try to Magna Cut. I don't know if we can keep enough stock of material to keep it as our production line. So one of those 3 blade steels is most likely what you're going to get if you're signing up on the waiting list. And then also on the Bayer is 20 CV and is at $150 price point as well. So the Bayer, one little hidden note, it does have a little hidden lanyard hole that is, again, not messing with our clean aesthetic look, but still offering you the ability that if you want to, you can throw a lanyard on it.
I love that. Yeah, I hate lanyard holes when they get in the way of anything. So when people hide them, that makes me happy because I'll never use it. But if you hide it, I don't mind that it's there at all. So
exactly,
I commend you for making that move. So the Rockwall, the Bayer, there's a chef knife. I know you've alluded to there being some other like fixed blade type models that you've already.
It's a goal. We don't have like designs.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's already a pretty diverse lineup, even with just what you've just held up. You've got a liner lock with titanium scales. Mine's in 20 CV. The first one was XHP. Magna Cut's a super exciting thing. We can probably spend a few minutes talking about that. But the Bayer's a slip joint. So that's way different already. Non-locking knife and a locking knife. Both small, both slim. And then a chef knife is a totally different direction. Did that come from, like, I guess, where did that come from? Because I can't think of anybody else who makes a couple folders and the next thing that they do is a chef knife, but I love it. I think it's awesome.
So chef knife has its advantages. It helps us with our biggest, I guess we have a beast that needs to be fed, which is the grinding machine. So it gives us the ability to use that machine's time to our advantage as a brand. But as far as the reason why we're doing a chef knife, honestly, Will's made chef knives, prototypes himself that were more rustic and weren't something that he was able to sell or create into a product line over 2 years ago. So this isn't something that's just like, hey, we're trying to get money or something like that. Right. This is something that Will's very passionate about, cooking, and having a good chef knife is something that he's wanted to do. And again, in the chef knife industry, more than even the knife industry, it's really hard to find a good American made chef knife that's offering you good steel, good quality, and a reasonable price point. So we do want to make this something that isn't just a blip in the pan product for Tactile. It's Tactile Knife Co, but is rather a kind of a product line that sticks around, that is something that is a good offering that holds its own weight.
I dig that. And yeah, I have not gotten the sense from you at all, or from anything I've seen from Tactile Knife Co., that you're the type of company who's just creating a product to create a product. Like, it seems clear the way that you guys have set out and your product line already, that you guys are into what you're doing. And especially like from the beginning, how I was talking about the fact that you guys are improving on things as you go, and you're taking the time and attention to be constantly looking at what you're making and nerding out about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people who just make products because they're only looking at sales figures and how do we use these materials kind of things, like that doesn't end up, it loses its soul, and I feel like you guys have this cool kind of soul about you, where you're making products that you guys are nerdy about. And as somebody who's nerdy about knives, I love that. I was just
Thanks.
watching the other day, there's a Steve Jobs clip. I think it was like Knife Nuts podcast or something that shared it for some reason. Somebody that I follow on my knife Instagram, some knife account, shared this clip of Steve Jobs, and it was early in Apple. And I think for the year they had lost like $1 billion. Like, it's not a good year for Apple. And somebody in the crowd during a Q&A kind of dissed Steve Jobs and basically like asked him to explain himself. And he gave this really cool answer about, which now obviously looks really good. If it hadn't worked, it wouldn't have looked so good, but about how they were setting out not to sit down with an engineering team and think, what's our coolest tech? Now, how do we market it? Instead, what they were trying to do as a company was look at what the consumer wanted and then create the thing the consumer wanted. And then the sales would naturally follow. And it was like the different way of looking at it compared to how tech operated at the time. At the time, everybody was like, this is the tech that we've just created. Now, how do we market it so people want it? And instead, Apple reinvented the wheel and changed the game by thinking, what does the consumer want? What the consumer wants is this. Now let's engineer it. And that's not the easier way to do it. I think a lot of the time it takes more effort and more sincere thought, but I like that you guys are kind of that way. You're thinking, what's the knife we want? What's the knife that would be cool? Oh, Will has been making kitchen knives on his own and wants to like operate in that arena, and he's already nerdy about it. Like, let's do it. We've got this grinding machine. We can make it happen. And it's cool because it seems like it's coming out of left field, but it really makes sense when you talk about how it got there.
Yeah, it definitely is, and honestly, like one of my personal like, hey, I'd like this to happen. That ended up being prototypes, and it will come to market hopefully. Just at the time, we don't know the exact date. Is if you saw like the original first little teases of this knife, it had a bottle opener on it. And it's got a bottle opener on this like back 2/3, and then it has this small little blade on it. And I was like, hey, it'd be really cool if. And I came back the next week, and they already had it all drawn up. They were cutting parts, and I was like, well, dang, I guess this is something we're gonna do. And I remember the first slip joints, we were waiting for springs, waiting for everything, and finally we were gonna get it and be able to try and see if it would work. And I ran to the gas station, went and bought a couple Topo Chicos, and made sure that it functioned and popped before having to stab down. So it's a fun little thing. So coming from the EDC community, maybe a little bit more on the gear side than the production knife side, that was something that I thought was fun and enjoyable.
That's way cool. I didn't know that was you behind that, but I saw on Instagram that was called like the Beskar or something, right?
So it's again the Bayer. It's the same.
Oh, okay.
It's the same design. It's just an alternate blade idea.
Am I thinking of something else that somebody was calling the Beskar or the Bexar or something like that?
So Bexar, Baxar,
Is that how you spell Bayer?
That's how you spell Bayer.
Gotcha.
Again, we from Texas. This is how we're going to do this.
I dig it.
So Bayer, we name our knives after counties. So Rockwall is a county that's 5 minutes away from our shop and is the smallest county in Texas. It's the beginning. It's the smallest little seed of what we plan on starting off with. The Bayer is San Antonio, so the Alamo. That county is spelled Baxar and pronounced Bayer. So one of our founders, John, who's really specializes in marketing and email campaigns, stuff like that. He's from there, so this was kind of an homage and tribute to him. So we are we have those two products, and as far as names wise, and then the chef knives. I don't think we're going to do anything like that with those. We'll just to be chef knife and length. Keep that streamlined and simple.
Yeah. Do you think as you continue to make folders down the line that you'll kind of keep that same, like, will they
That's
all
our
be?
goal.
That's awesome. I have an affinity for stuff like that. Like the knife company that I've started with my buddy Ryan, where we're waiting for our prototypes. We both like German car culture. We're both just into and European cars in general. And so we started kind of with the end in mind of like, as we're naming our first knife, we wanted it to tie into that like kind of shared thing that we've bonded over, even though he actually lives in Texas. So it's all been just Zoom calls and we've become friends online, but we've always bonded over that. And so it's fun because now as we've continued to design subsequent models, none of which we've shown yet, those will be secret until hopefully the Avant goes well. But each one, as we're designing it, we're like trying to tie in an element of European car culture and then like name it after that element. And it's just cool. Like having, I don't know. I like when names of knives have meaning and make sense, and especially when they're cohesive. So I dig it. I like
you
that
look
you
at
guys are.
Chris Reeves knives is again that they definitely have their cohesive brand brand recognition, their naming system, and there's a lot of respect for that.
Yep. Yeah, and it's a dangerous game if you have too many models because eventually that'll get real hard, especially if you pick
Texas
a narrow
is a
field.
big state. Yeah,
You've got a lot of places there, and yeah, it's I don't know. I've thought about it because I think eventually down the line as well, I'll probably do some designs that are just me. I'm loving working with Ryan, and this isn't me saying like, screw you, Ryan, but there will be designs that are just Bearded Gear or whatever I decide to call my own entity as well. And so my brain already is constantly thinking like, what would be my theme? You know, because I just love that idea of sticking with a theme. It's like I hike a lot. Do I pick like mountain ranges and peaks that I've hiked, or do I pick, you know, like it could be anything, and it's just fun to think what that could be. So I like that you guys are so Texas, and it's such a Texas answer to like all of our folders are getting named after a county in Texas, and that's cool.
Thanks.
So as you guys are kind of rolling out, and yeah, I guess like long term, you see you guys growing into that bigger space and filling it well. But right now, I'm just curious logistically, like if you're at about, you said 50 to 70 rock walls a week right now, how do you get to like past 100? Like what is the thing about knife making right now that is kind of a bottleneck? Because I think so many people try to picture what that process is and how those knives are actually made. Like what is it that kind of needs to happen for you guys to be 100 knives and then 200 knives a week? And like, what's the hardest part of the process that's kind of slowing it down at the moment?
So the first step was definitely assembly and the fine tuning craftsman aspect of each rock wall, making sure that each of them has a great action, has everything dialed in the way that it needs to, lock up everything. So that was definitely
an 8-hour shift. I don't know how many I could put together and have them perfect and in a box. That's
exactly. So that's definitely if you're in the gun world, sounds like you know at least a little bit about it. You probably know of like Wilson Combat and Nighthawk and stuff like that. So
Some crazy 1911s. Yeah.
yeah, so each assembly technician that we have 4 people right now that really just assemble knives, and those people are given kits, and those kits are for each knife, and they have to make each piece fit together and spend time making that happen. So you're talking about each component's put together by one person. It's not this assembly line, push a button, your part moves on away from you. You are focused. You have a quality control card that has a checklist that you've got to follow these instructions, make sure that all these things are done right. So assembly was really difficult for us to get dialed in. But now that we have it more dialed in, we started hitting where grinding was our bottleneck. And whenever we finally got our Seatman grinder, that kind of gotten taken off the list as our problem source. And now it's to the point where surface grinding is our bottleneck. So we can't make flat stuff. We can't make not flat stuff flat enough, or flat stuff to the thickness that it has to be to hold our tolerances. That's our current bottleneck. So we're looking at trying to source something to solve that problem. And I'm sure that whenever we hit that next level, that something else will pop up and be like, hey, this is your problem. But that right now, currently, as of today, is what's holding back numbers. But then again, with the rock wall, I think I'm happy with those numbers. I'd love to add another product line and still keep around those numbers as far as production for that model, and then just add a new product line that's going to make it where we can have a little bit of diversity. I really do love this slip joint model. Being a Texan-born kid, slip joints, case knives, stuff like that is my childhood. I've spent hours and hours and days in the back of knife traders' trucks at flea markets and trade days and swap meets, and gone to collectors' houses and gone through every single slip joint that they have, from case knives to eye brands to buck knives to hen and roosters, bulldogs, everything under the sun. So slip joints are really a passion thing for me, kind of from my childhood as well. So I really love this model, and I think that the EDC community is going to really like it as well. And shoot, for the price point, I don't think we can go wrong with it. I think people are really going to appreciate it.
Yeah, I dig it. I mean, honestly, I'm not a slip joint guy at all. I'm too fidgety, and I don't like every time I give one a try, it doesn't last long for me, and I haven't tried many. But when you held up how thin that one was and how like actually modern it seems, because modern slip joint is a term that gets thrown around a lot the last couple of years, but titanium scales that are machined in a really cool way, that kind of signature, if it feels like this, I know I'm gonna
it's the same exact texture. Yeah.
And the thinness and the, like, I don't know, I just dig it. Plus, I don't know. Sometimes when something gets held up in front of you as a knife guy, you want it, and then you start thinking of ways you can justify it. And I find myself like, oh, now that like COVID's done and gone, and like I'm able to go to church in person, it's like I wear a suit coat sometimes, so maybe a slip joint could make sense, because it's a perfect spot to slip it into a suit coat pocket. It's like I don't actually need that, but I find myself trying to justify it now that you're holding that one up and it looks so cool. So
yeah, I will say, so I know I talked to you about our robot that helped us trial test the fail factor of our spring. It took 3 months and 15 revisions for us to be able to get to the point where we liked a spring as far as action goes. So I know you have a rock wall, and your rock wall has an action that's snappy and crisp and enjoyable. So that is a flipper's action. So on a slip joint, you have what's called a walk and a talk. And we took a long time trying to get that dialed in. And then once we did get it dialed in, we had to fail factor. And so I think we're probably, I'd guarantee you, we're at least in high 20s as far as revisions. And we've been working on this for 4.5 months now. So it's definitely been a fun process, but challenging at the same time.
Yeah. That's cool though. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting to hear like how your kind of steps have been too with like getting Rockwall production up, and like each time you like conquer something, there's another hurdle you got to overcome. And then the idea of adding a second model to that is like now there's two things that can have hurdles at once. And
Mm-hmm.
it intrigues me to no end to try to envision what a day to day, like what each day is like for your team over there to be playing with the things that I love so much and like trying to solve problems around them. It just seems really cool, and I envy it in a way. So the slip joint, the Bayer, is going to
Mm-hmm.
come in the version that you've been holding up. Is the version with the bottle opener that you mentioned, is that
That'll be
also
down the
gonna...
road, probably not
Okay.
not first release, but we'll do something like that down the road.
Uh,
Probably the same way that we plan on doing the rock wall, where once we hit the wait list, once the
mm,
wait list is over, we'll start playing with it and having fun. So like we've got a bucket of Zerk scales waiting for the rock wall, but we don't really want to do a whole run of Zerk knives and just release those a different way, or release those to the wait list, and then all the people that signed up before, signed up after, be like, well, dang it, I didn't get one. So we're gonna play with that system afterwards, once the wait list is completed. But
yeah. And do I remember seeing for Blade Show, didn't you guys do like
a
a...
time Mascus,
Yeah,
yeah,
full dress basically?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
epic. So yeah, I'm not even, I don't know, I'm not big into snazzy materials. I'm more of like
Mm-hmm.
a a knife that I'll feel comfortable using is the one that I'll choose. So fancy materials usually make me feel bad about using knives, and that's kind of why I stay away from them. But Zerk is rad, and I dig it. And when you guys do that, obviously you haven't done it yet, so I don't know if you have a plan, but is it going to be like matte Zerk? Is it going to be glossy Zerk? Is it just kind
Hold
of...
my beer and wait and see.
Gotcha.
So we do plan on definitely doing some gloss, some mirror, because Zerk really does shine.
Yeah.
But if you aren't aware, like once you oxidize Zerk, the hardness of that outside layer is extremely dense. So I've carried custom Zerk knives that were a lot of money, and it takes a long time and a lot of hard use for it to finally show up.
Mm,
So even in a production knife, and we don't plan on bending people over the barrel just because it's Zerk. We do plan on charging what it costs us to create it and make our money that we have to make, but we don't plan on being like, well, this is going to be $1,000 knife just because it has Zerk handles.
mm,
So again, like you look at Tactile as a brand, I think that their pricing for their exotic material definitely reflects cost and the amount of time inputted to create that product. It's not just, hey, this is fancy, you're gonna pay for it.
yeah. Which I think honestly plagues a lot of the industry, especially right
Mm-hmm.
now. Like I'll see production knives that are we built or Riat built, whatever it is, and the standard version will be $350, and then for a Timascus clip, it goes up $150. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's necessary. Like, maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't pick it even if it was the same price for me personally, just because I don't love
Yeah,
the look of it. But it's
yeah,
like sometimes I look at those, and a knife will cost for a dressy version. On a production knife, it'll be 4 times the cost of the regular one, and I'm like, that doesn't do anything for me again. But kudos to you guys for thinking of it in a way of like, how can we get this cool material into people's hands? And obviously you're not going to do it for free. You're not going to eat the cost difference. You have to
yeah.
charge something extra, but to
We're
do
not
it in a
Spider
way
Co.
that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I had a really good question that I was trying to hold on to, and then I lost it because I suck. Um, oh, this is what it was. So the Rockwall is a $300 knife retail.
Mm-hmm.
And this one in particular that I'm holding up, 20 CV blade steel, that's very good. In 2021, 20 CV is a great steel. Even XHP, which you guys use, also a very good steel. You guys are using premium steels. You're using, I assume this is just 6AL 4V. This is the good titanium. This
Yeah,
isn't.
grade 5.
Yeah. And then you've got a nice clip on it. You've got a titanium backspacer. You guys have taken time to do internal milling, a lot of it
A
actually.
lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. So this knife, from a standpoint of like materials and what I would imagine is machine time compared to a more basic knife, especially with this external milling pattern, all of it. The fact that you guys come in at $300 to me is a little bit surprising, especially because, and I've talked about it before on the podcast, there seems to be kind of this like imaginary line drawn in the sand by the big three, if you will, by the Chris Reeve, Hinderer, Strider crowd, that like $450 is what a US made knife costs to them. And I think the small Sebenza might be a little less than that. But even so, you are less expensive than most US made knives. I would even venture to say probably, I could be wrong, but all, if you're looking at titanium and 20 CV. How did
The
you guys?
titanium Benchmates are close to
Oh,
that
okay.
price point.
But
They
Bentley
are
makes so many knives. Like their
exactly.
scale is huge. So for a more boutique size, like if I wanted, here's a good example. ProTech will make a titanium version of the Malibu
Mm-hmm.
that they sometimes use 20 CV on, like these. Sometimes they're Damascus, but on a 20 CV one with titanium handles, I think they're like 450. Which to me, even when I see that, I'm not like, oh, they're really screwing me. It's like, oh, it's a titanium one. That's cool. But you guys are so much less than that. So for you guys, is that like a long game thing? Like you'll get your production to where that'll make more sense? Or have you guys just like, are you guys being nicer than other companies are? How does that happen so that the end consumer can have a knife and these materials built this well for that low of a number?
So I can't speak obviously to the cost of production for other
Of course.
brands,
Yeah.
but for our brand, based off of our cost on production, or based off of our goals for cost of production, we came up with that price point. And our costs were more and are more than what we originally set out for them to be. What we originally booked it to be, but instead of charging a price point that was higher, we decided we're going to stick with it. So number wise, we aren't making as much as we'd like to on a rock wall, but that's also because, again, the process. If the process is dialed in and is the way it should be, we can have a $300 knife and still make numbers that we want to make. We can have a $150 knife and still make numbers that we want to make. Again, full titanium, full milled in-house hardware. We're not
CV steel. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not trying to cut corners. We're trying to offer a great product at a great price that we can stand behind. And again, focusing on the made in-house, made in America. So I do 100% understand, because like I've been in that world. I've been in the Mintech price point that's $750 minimum. The custom price point is $1,200 minimum. Some of those numbers are justifiable. Some of those numbers aren't. We break down what are our costs to produce. How many are we going to make a week? At our machine costs, at our space costs, at our electricity costs, at our employees' hourly costs. At that point, where is our goal, and where do we really start making money? And so that's what we've done, and that's where the $300 price point on the Rockwall came up from. So again, like you said, for an American-made knife that has these specs, you're not really going to find much else in that price point.
It's pretty unheard of.
Yeah. And that's our goal. Our goal is to be different. Our goal is to do something right. And I will say that if we'd started from the ground floor in an empty warehouse with no lighting, no equipment, no anything other than just a team of people, we would not be able to do that. So part of the reason why we do have a leg up is because we are part of a larger company, or a larger company helps us out. if that makes any sense. So because Tactile Turn is standing on its own 2 feet, it's a strong brick shithouse. It's all there. It's able to make it where Tactile Knife Co. can get going and gain momentum and not just automatically come out of the gate crippled, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, the idea of starting a knife company like Tactile Knife Co. is, like you said, if you didn't have that boost, the structure already existent.
4 Swiss lathes, 3 wire EDMs, 2 Doosan's, 2 surface grinders, a Seatman grinder, a CMX, 5 other lathes that are used for other projects.
That would be a loan I would never want to take out. That's for sure.
Yeah. All the finishing equipment, all the sandblasting equipment. We have everything that we need at our fingertips. We've had to buy redundancies so that we can, as a brand, get going. But we had the initial leg up because we didn't have to buy the whole fleet.
Yeah, I dig it. That's cool, man. So I guess let's kind of switch gears a little bit. We've been going for 90 minutes already. I guess for you personally, if it's all right, I'd like to dig in a little bit to like the types of knives that you've enjoyed collecting, what kind of stuff you've been into and all that. So I know you mentioned as a kid, you had slip joints and you were into all that stuff. Was there like a person who got you into knives? Was it just generally the culture you were brought up in? How did you get to be like, how is this where you are now?
So I was born and raised a collector, and knives were in my blood and still are. Whenever my dad probably has over 2,000 pocket knives, most of them are slip joints that he's collected over the years. Some of them are really nice. He does have a great collection of high-end collectible slip joints. He has a good amount of custom knives. He's owned multiple Dimcos. He owns a lot of other industry staples that are great products. But as a child, I always went with him to these flea markets, trade days, swap meets, and learned knives. You can hand me a case pocket knife, and I can tell you what year it was made. You can hand me most good pocket knives, and I can tell you rough estimate how much it should bring, how much it should be sold for. So I've really just spent my whole life in knives. As a youth, like you said, at the age of 12, my dad bought an Emerson, and I was like, this is cool, because he'd had Spydercos before. Spydercos were never really my jam. Sorry, Spyderco. I just, it's not for me.
You're good. I'm a fanboy of Spyderco, and I don't take any offense. Different strokes. You're good.
Yeah. So he got an Emerson. I was like, I gotta have one. It's so cool. The Emerson Wave at that point in time was just such a different idea. And then he got a Benchmade, and I was like, well, I got to get a Benchmade. So I ended up talking him out of his Benchmade, talked him out of his Emerson. And then I remember at the age of 17, I went and I bought a used Microtech Switchblade. And my goal and my, I guess, pride was always, I've got a better knife than any other person around me. And then after I got married, I was friends with a man who did leather work. And he was like, hey, man, there's a lot of people on Instagram that collect knives. I was like, bullshit. Not Instagram's for girls and who take pictures of themselves and foodies. I was like, that's all it is. And he's like, no. And he showed me on his phone that there's knife collectors, guns, and all this other stuff. I was like, well, this is pretty cool. So I gave it a shot. And then I was like, well, I can take pictures of the stuff that I have. I had Benchmade Switchblade, some stuff like that. So Benchmade, Emerson, Microtech was as top of the line as I went. And then I realized, hey, there's mid-techs, hey, there's customs, and it just went down the rabbit hole fast. So I just started collecting. So right now, I've worked with a lot of industry staples with my handkerchief company that we closed down. So Chris Reeves knives, Microtech knives, Marfione custom knives, Chavez knives, about 60 other custom knife maker brands, from Jared Ozier, who used to include our stuff in every single packaging that he did. He was really great. Is still a really great dude. So my collection personally now is a lot of Chris Reeves knives, some Strider knives, custom wise, Peter Carey, who I have extreme high respect for. Richard Rogers, again, a wizard with a CNC machine. My great friend Mike Bond, I've got one of his folding knives. He's a custom maker. Borka Blades, who's somebody I've worked with for years. I've got really great respect for him. I have a ProTech Malibu. I have some Benchmade still that I carry that I have, but most of the time in my pocket, you're going to see a Rockwall. You might see a Microtech OTF or a Chris Reeves Knives Sabenza 21 or old pivot style Umnumza and something like that. So that's what you'll see in my pocket on a daily basis.
Killer. So I've been on kind of a journey with Microtech for a little while, where I've just been trying to find the one for me. And I have this like constant battle with them because the OTFs are so cool. To anybody who's ever been a kid, an OTF is awesome. Like it just is, right?
It used to be a felony for us. Yeah. We're going to want to carry it
in California. But so
they make Cali legal blades.
Yeah, those are no fun though. So like I have a Scarab 2 right now with the all DLC one. It's awesome.
It's big.
It's real big. And then I just got one of I finally gave a try to the Exo set. I got a Stormtrooper one. But the Goldilocks that I finally found, like my go-to Microtech OTF, is the Troodon, not the combat Troodon, but just the Troodon. And I deleted the glass breaker off of it because I hate glass breakers. And this knife is just like
this. It's a good size.
Yeah, it's just right for me.
It's beefy enough that you get a full grip, and it's a good length for a full grip also as well.
I just dig it so much.
It's like a wide UDX 85.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the same length. It's just a little bit more spread out, and so you get a little bit more grind height on the blade too. It's not quite as thick behind the edge as some of the other guys are. I dig it. But it's been fun to like just kind of make my way through the lineup. And there's still one or two that I haven't tried. Like I haven't ever had a Halo, and I still need to try a Cypher. But those are kind of more.
70 is honestly a good knife. If you like a secondary, it's just such an invisible small profile.
So I have a 70, but it's partially serrated and it's just not really. I think if I got one of these in a single edge, so it had a slicier blade, I might like it more. But because it's so tiny, all of my like secondary knife tasks are like primarily just
box
slicing
opening
through stuff.
And
this double edge isn't great for it, especially with the partially serrated. But I mean, they're fun knives. So for you, as you've been into the Microtech world for a while, it sounds like you've even had Marfione customs and all that kind of stuff. Is there like a favorite model for you, or what's kind of been your top hits of the Microtech world?
For me, I started off with an underwater demolition back in 2007 was whenever I bought that, and I carried that for years. Yeah. So for me, I have a Combat Troodon custom that's really special to me, just sentimental wise. I've actually bought it from Tony this year at Blade Show Thursday night before the show. So that's always going to be something fun. If I had to pick one of their customs, though, it'd probably be the Micro Halo that they're doing. I don't own it yet, but I do plan on getting one once they get past the prototype phase. They're going to do 600 units of prototype, and once they get past that, they're going to do a production version from the custom shop or whatever. Like it'll be a lower price point, and I want to get one of those just because the form factor size is just like there's so much detail, so much machining that goes into getting that tolerance just perfect for charge fire OTF that's in that small of a form factor.
Yeah. And so those, because they're single action, I've been told, I've never even played with a Halo. They fire harder, right? So fun fact about me is every time I carry an OTF, I love to show it to people because everyone always thinks they're fun. And if we don't say honestly that we like showing cool knives to people, then we're lying. Everyone who's into cool knives wants to show them to people. But just the other night, I had my Scarab on me, and I was at dinner. My buddy's in town, and there was a water bottle on the table. And he was like, will it go through the water bottle? And that's what everybody always wants to know when you have an OTF is like, oh, if you press the button, like, can it go through anything though? And it's always like, it won't. And I try, and of course it just comes off track. And like, but with the Halo, with it being single action, I guess that's my thing. Like with it being a single action OTF, if on a light duty task like that, like a water bottle, would that go through?
An Ozorka or thin wall water bottle, that smart water bottle right there,
This is probably a little much.
That's a little much, especially for that micro. For a full size Halo, which is a 5-inch blade, I think it's going to get enough momentum that you would have some fairly good penetration. I don't know about full through, so that it would lock up on the other side. But yeah, it's definitely that's one of the things everyone's curious about with OTFs,
right? Yeah, when I remember being a kid and getting a really cheap, like we would go every year to Phoenix. There's a huge gun show that would happen there, and things in like December. And I bought this like under $15 OTF just because I was a kid and thought OTFs were so cool. It was garbage, right? Just looked terrible.
Fun for a day, but that's it.
Yeah, and I remember like right after getting it, just like pure curiosity, like pulling up the bottom of my shirt and trying to get it to fire through. And it didn't even make like a pinhole in the shirt. That's how weak it was. And I was like, oh, this is like, it was such a letdown. I'm sure if I did that with even like my Troodon, it would probably thin material. I'd at least make an incision if I held it up point blank and tried to fire it. But there's this like desire, I guess maybe what I actually need is just eventually to get like the ballistic knife from Call of Duty that shoots out and puts people in the throat. Then I'll feel happy. So for you, as you've been collecting over time and you've gone through kind of like the customs realm, you named a ton of makers that I also respect and I wish I could call friends and say that I've worked with. That's a really cool list of people. Do you feel like have you kind of gotten to a point now where you feel like you're good with your collection, or have you ever been at a spot where you feel like I'm happy with what I've got now, I don't really need to chase anything, or is the whole still bottomless?
Yeah, there. As a collector who I am, that's never going to change. I'm always going to want. Will I always buy? No. I've had very little movement in my collection over the last few years compared to how volatile it was in earlier stages. But there's still always going to be the lottos that I want. So anything made by Jeremy Marsh, anything made by Lee Williams, people like that are just, in my opinion, amazing people and amazing products as well.
Lee Williams is the Kickstop guy, right?
Yeah. Okay. He's in Austin, or actually Houston.
His knives look epic. I don't think I've ever even handled one of his customs. I've handled like the Wingman knives that use the Kickstop, but that's probably not the same sensation that you would get from one of his customs, I'd imagine.
His customs are bonkers. He's a great dude as well. And that's part of it as well for me. Like, man, I'm not going to support a maker that I don't like as an individual. Just because I've got money and my money can be spent elsewhere, and I'd rather do that than support someone that I don't think is as good of a person. So I'm really picky when it comes to stuff like that.
That's good, as you should be. I was really resistant to trying custom knives, like spending my own money on them for a long time, because I just felt like I was still having so much fun with production knives. It was like, why? If the well hasn't run dry in this arena, then why am I jumping to the next most expensive rung? without needing to. But in the last couple of months, I've gotten a couple of really cool, much higher end production knives than I was playing with, like Holtz and Shiros and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I've gotten a couple of customs. And yeah, it's like one of those things where I think what ultimately got me to finally do it was like just talking to more makers and seeing that there's some really cool dudes out there who I want to support by having their work. And I like that the knife community still functions that way. I feel like it's kind of an old school type of market in the knife community sometimes. The fact that there's still shows and it's not all just social media marketing, but there's these people who have books that people will wait years to get their spot on, and like just because they trust and like these dudes enough, and it's like there's this sense of kind of camaraderie to it. It's cool to hear that you, having been in it, I think even a little longer than I have, and being so much more immersed in it, doing the hanks and all that, that's only stronger for you. Like for you, it seems like it's so relationship focused.
For sure. It's about the people. This community is about the people. Yes, you are a count, you're a number, but if you go to a show, if you really spend any time at all, you'll realize that that's not the case, especially in the show scene. And like I know we've seen like an influx of pirates and on Instagram and stuff like that. But like it's different whenever it comes to like the show specifically, is where I think it really gets pure. Like so for example, the California Custom Knife Show, you have, especially last year, there was like 100 people, 150 people walking around this event. It really wasn't that many people. The years before, especially on Friday morning, you're talking about 300 people, maybe 400 tops. So these are the same people that are going to go to Blade Show. They're going to go to New York Custom Knife Show. That are going to go to the Gathering, which we plan on exhibiting, to the Gathering, Blade West, California Custom Knife Show as well. Yeah. So if y'all are ever...
I bought my pass for the Gathering, and I will be at CCKS and Blade Show. So
awesome.
We'll be seeing a lot
Blade
of
West, right?
Yeah.
So that's not far for you. So that's
like
easy.
45 minutes. It'll be perfect.
Yeah.
So
we plan on
get a hotel helps convince my wife that I can go to the show.
Yeah. The relationships, the seeing people in person, hell, there's handshake deals still. It's an older style, like you said. It's an older form. It's a form that I love as far as like how business is done compared to modern society. It's not Walmart. It's not Dollar General or anything like that. It's not Costco. This is definitely more about seeing people, about handling things. I know you've got friends in this industry. Anybody can join this industry and make friends. Anybody can be like, ask a friend of theirs, ask another account on social media, how do you like your rock wall? And you'll get 3 paragraphs back. Or there's a good chance you'll get a, hey, here's my phone number, give me a call, we'll talk it out, kind of a deal. And this is a family in a sense that's just not really found elsewhere.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's the biggest thing that I didn't expect to come from like taking my lifelong kind of obsession with knives to being an actual hobby that I was like really participating in the sense that I was collecting and posting on social media constantly and like into it, right? The thing that I least expected to be the reality was that I would have like some of my best friends genuinely today are people that I've now been talking to for years, like daily in some of these Instagram group chats and stuff. And like, it's a truly unique space. Especially I've had other hobbies too. Like I've been pretty deep into the automotive scene. I worked in the automotive world for a long time and went to meets every weekend, sometimes multiple. And I was taking pictures just for fun and also for people. And like, I was in that scene and it was not at all like the knife world, it's a special place. And there's always bad apples in any scene that you're in, but the knife community is also pretty good at seemingly weeding them out fairly
for
quickly
sure.
and protecting their own. And I think it's cool that it can be that way. And also, yeah, I don't know. It's cool that it's good for the companies that people seem to love doing what they do in this industry, and it's also good for the consumers. Like, people are enjoying themselves by being part of the hobby. It usually seems more one-sided than that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really crazy, the friendships that I've made. I've got friends all over the globe. I was talking to a guy in Israel that I'm friends with from knife community. I was talking today with a guy in New York City that is in the knife community that I'm really great friends with. My best friend's in Hawaii, and I talk to him on the phone every single day. And like, this is I never thought, like, in the same boat that you were in, that being part of social media and collecting one thing kind of a deal would open up all these different doors and opportunities and friendships.
That's awesome, man. So we're coming up on 2 hours. I feel like we should probably kind of tie a bow on this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess something that I like to ask makers, and I know you're not like a custom maker in the sense that you're in there, but you're part of this small fledgling knife company that is, in my opinion, from what I can observe so far, kind of crushing it for how brand new you guys are, for what you're doing, for the price point you're hitting, for all these things that I commend you for. So I'd consider you kind of in the maker space. So I like to ask makers, what's the thing about making or being in this role that you're in that you didn't expect to learn that has been like a big lesson or takeaway? Because I find I get some really interesting things when I ask this question. Like, is there something that being in this role now with Tactile Knife Company that you didn't expect to be part of it, or just a big lesson?
So I think the biggest thing for me is the team. I am a person, I am a part, but we are a team in every sense of the word at Tactile Knife Co. We all work together. We all have the same goals. If one department has a problem, all departments have a problem. We are a unit, and we come together with one goal in mind, and to create this brand from the ground up. And it's been really, really awesome to be part. So again, like, you're looking at, as far as the team's concerned, you had Tim Ardent Knives, you had Will Hodges, the HMFIC, you had Matt, who is the designer, Matt Palomore, the designer and programmer. You have Kevin, who does all the turn parts. You have John, who does all the online marketing and email campaigns, and myself. So that's the first 6 people that were part of this brand. And seeing number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 12, a couple people that didn't stay with us very long, go through this cycle, and us all come together as a unit to make this brand what it is today has been really an amazing experience. Us leaning on each other for things that we didn't know. So I've spent months in quality control because I've handled so many knives, and I know what a good feeling is. And they called me the adjudicator, and they didn't like me for quite a while because all I did was say, this doesn't pass. And we finally gotten to the point where we are now, where I don't have to wear that hat and can focus more on what I need to focus on. So it's been a really an opportunity I wouldn't trade to see it start from, like you said, from where we started, from the ground up.
I love it. So would you say it's been what you expected, or pretty different?
It's completely different. I've got such respect for every single member. Will keeps everything together. He's always doing stuff that helps the brand. He's always figuring out what's the next machine that we need, what is the problem source that we're having. He's doing a lot right now with the building that we're going to be moving into. Kevin does so much as far as like scheduling and production management. And I've seen that kind of looking big picture at a factory job that I had many years ago. Like, just all these different roles go together, but because we're such a small team, like, each of us are able to see every single thing happen every single day. and it's really a blessing for sure.
I love it. That's really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I'm envious of what you get to do, and I think
Thank you.
it's just fun for me to get to have conversations with people who are like, I don't know, like the idea alone of making a hobby into a career and being down in the weeds of that every day. Like what you're doing for work is still work. Absolutely. And I'm sure there are parts of your job that are just as unfun as any job that's out there. But at the end of the day, the fact that it gets to center around this and that you get to be in meetings talking about this and like you're getting to be hands-on, like spending a couple months QCing radiators would suck. But if you're doing it with these like that, it's like it sounds like such a
It's the
more
silver
grand
lining for
adventure.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really, really cool. And I love also hearing that it sounds like you guys were all already pretty into it before you started. Like you can kind of tell when brands are like, oh, there's money to be made in this industry. So because of some investment or whatever, like we're gonna try to make a name for ourselves in this industry, and it's because there's a market there. And then there's a different type of company altogether when it's somebody who's an enthusiast already and then sets out because they want to do it and because it's what they pick other than just for the money. And I like that you guys are knife nerds, that you're into it, that you collect customs and you know all these people, and like it all kind of blends together to, I don't know, it makes me more excited about what you guys are going to come out with next too, because knife nerds making cool things as they're learning a lot as they're making them. The natural progression is that your next products are going to be really cool too.
Knife Nerds came out with some pretty cool steel, and we're excited to play with it.
Yeah, MagnaCut. Maybe we should end on that note, actually. So
I haven't done as much research as I need to.
I haven't either. That's why I was hoping to talk to you about it. So I've looked at charts.
Yeah,
that's about all that my monkey brain can.
I've seen its dot versus other dots, and
exactly.
that's pretty much it. Yeah,
and its dot looks pretty good.
Yeah,
yeah. I would love to see. There's already quite a few people working with it, which is also unique about this new steel, because new steels come out. I shouldn't say they come out fairly frequently. New steels start to get talked about fairly frequently, where like, because Laren Thomas starts testing on some M398, which was like, for some reason, basically nobody used M398. Then all of a sudden, he's going to do some testing on it. And then because it's getting talked about, a couple makers were like, I'll try some. And then you see some M398 knives hit the market. But I've never seen a steel kind of like go into the zeitgeist
position itself
a little bit.
Way, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, seemingly everybody is trying to get some stock who's a maker so they can try it and use it. And I hope that Laren Thomas keeps up whatever he's doing, because the fact that he was able to develop it, obviously, I think is a huge reason for its now kind of meteoric rise, where everybody's just trying to get some of it. And I'm excited. I haven't owned a knife in it yet. And so as somebody who geeks out about that stuff, I want to try it. I want to beat it through.
Will Hodges got one of the Sabenza MagnaCuts.
Oh,
so it was definitely a short list thing for him, because it's something we plan on working with, and if it's on radars like that, it's definitely worth giving attention to. And I know we'd placed the order before going to Blade Show for the material. So like we do plan on hopefully giving it a shot for the Rockwall, seeing if it fits well. Again, I think one of the biggest problems this industry is going to see is if it's the steel that everyone thinks it can be, supply is going to be a pain in the ass. So there's going to be makers fighting makers to get their order in. So I think that's definitely going to be maybe something that holds it back. Is just who's going to be the pecking order? How's that going to work? Is that going to adjust price, which is going to make it be more expensive of a steel, which is going to really hurt us as brands because we're having to fight supply and demand.
Yeah, that's been a big thing for Vanex, because a lot of people are Vanex curious, and it's like just really, really difficult. From all the makers I've talked to who've been trying to get some, not everybody's able to even get it. Like it's difficult to get the supply, and that's not even being talked about on the level that MagnaCut is now. But it seems like they have plans to make a lot of it. I hope.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's making a stir, and I hope it's as good as it on paper. On that dot on the chart looks really, really good.
Yeah.
And that's cool too. Like, again, another feather in your guys' hat that on a brand new model that you're just again trying to make enough of right now, you're already like, let's throw MagnaCut at it. You're not like, oh, well, we need to just keep going, like stay on course. You're like, MagnaCut's cool. We're going to put it in our knives. I love that. It's so cowboy.
So XHP is really great steel. I think it's a great overall steel. As far as where it is, again, its dot is a good dot. 20CV is a great dot too. As far as working with it as a maker side of things, it's been a big pain in our rear. We've had a lot of difficulties with the heat treat process. Again, we've scrapped so many blades. Not that we haven't done that with XHP, but we've learned that and been able to get past that. And part of our, like I said, the surface grinding is an issue with us. Part of that reason is because 20CV is so much more difficult to work with compared. So MagnaCut, its dot says that it's supposed to be nicer to me than 20CV does. So again, that's a reason why, major reason why us as a brand are wanting to give it a shot.
Sure. Yeah. I'm glad that I don't have to deal with how difficult a steel is to grind, and I just get to be the end user, because stuff like that makes my head hurt. Like, yeah. Interesting world, metallurgy. But anyway, I love that you guys are going to try it, because I want to try it. So the fact that you guys are adapting as things are changing is really cool. Cool. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. Before we totally sign off, where can people find you, find Tactile Turn? If they're listening, there won't be links down below because they're listening, but if they're on YouTube, I'll list stuff. But where can people find Michael? Where can people find Tactile Turn? What's the best way to get info about your knives and all that stuff? Just how are you discoverable?
So our brand is our website, tactileknife.co. .com does redirect, but it is easy to find us. Both on Instagram, we have a Facebook group, Tactile Knife Co. As well. There's a good community of people there. Instagram and our Facebook group are where we are the most active. We do have an emails if you do sign up for our email list as well. So there's many ways that you can sign up for us. Again, like the Waitlist, like I said earlier, is how you buy our knives currently. We're not stocking dealers. We're not selling just first come first serve on a website. Just sign up on our waiting list if you'd like to own one of our products. And definitely, if you're interested in the chef knife, stay tuned, because we do plan on getting a Kickstarter campaign going on that as soon as possible.
Killer. So yeah, that is super simple. If everything is just Tactile Knife Co. across the board.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, yeah, seriously, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said at the beginning, I'd been looking forward to this one because I think you guys are unique. In 2021, there aren't that many brand new US knife companies doing everything in-house, and you guys are you're making cool products. Like, you don't feel like you've never done this before right off the bat, which is really cool. So I really look forward to seeing where you guys go, and hopefully this isn't the last time that we do this. I'd love to, as things continue to develop for you, we'll do another podcast sometime and kind of check back in and see where things are looking.
Sounds good. Yeah. I appreciate anyone who tuned in and watched this episode.
Appreciate it, man. Well, Michael, thank you so much. And everybody who listened, we appreciate you. This has been episode number 26 of the Bearded Gear podcast, and we will see you on the next one.